I think it's between 1 and 10.
13. Oh. 3.
Yep.
6.
It's 7. You can go first, you can defer to her.
My position on religion and God.
Yes. 4
I
minutes.
am a Catholic and believe in God, and I was raised Catholic. And when I was 17 years old, I went off to college. I went to a Catholic university, and I didn't go to church for 35 years. And I've been going for about 4 years now. And when I was 16 and 17, I heard Charlie Brown's Teacher. And now I hear what they're saying. And it fascinates me. And I think that my receptiveness to it has everything to do with 2 things. My ability to look back and reflect on what I was exposed to, and my maturation and circumstances and experience that have occurred over those 58 years. And it was at a time in my life when I was seeking to fill some space created by an empty nest and a couple of other life events. And I sought out things like exercise and yoga and meditation and prayer and church, because church was familiar to me. And when I went looking for a church, I encountered a few dark and kind of depressing churches, and then I came across one that was lit up. There was a lot of singing and flowers and positivity. And fortunately, my experience was always pretty positive. My dad is a Eucharistic minister. He goes to church every day and says his rosaries every day, and is a shining example of what I call kind of a living saint. So I see something that works really well: peace of mind, happiness, contention, or contentness. And I have an uncle who's a priest, Catholic priest. And I also have an aunt who was a Catholic nun who left the church with a priest to get married.
Wow.
And another uncle who was a priest who left the priesthood as well. So an interesting kind of cauldron of Catholicism. But I feel pretty strongly about it. It gives me a lot of peace of mind. I tell my kids who don't go to church, I feel better when I come out of there every time. Not exactly sure why.
That's awesome.
But that's my stance on it.
Awesome. Well, hi everyone, I'm Danielle. I was also raised Catholic and come from a family that is all Catholic. However, I identify as an atheist. And often when I tell people that I'm an atheist, I get really negative responses. People say things like, "Oh, Danielle, you give so much to the community, you seem so Christian." Or, "Oh, Danielle, you're so nice. How are you an atheist?" So my goal today is to talk about what an atheist is, which is simply someone who doesn't believe in deities. It is not about ethics. It is not about doing the right thing. That is completely separate from religion in my point of view and in my experience. I was raised Catholic, like I said, but when I was 8 years old and started CCD, which is like your classes to learn about the Bible, every question I asked, I was hushed. I was told to not encourage the other students to ask questions, and I was pushed through and given my first communion, even though I didn't go through the course, because I was asking too many questions. So that's what started my personal journey with religion. I ended up going to every religion I could find, every temple, every church. I went in to learn, to find out how it was different from Catholicism. And ultimately, where I ended up landing when I was in college is that I'm an atheist, and specifically meaning that I just don't believe that deities exist. However, I'm also agnostic, which means that I believe it's possible. So I'm not here to tell anyone that their God doesn't exist or that their God is unreal, because I have no idea. And I think that's part of being human, is that we really don't know a lot of things. For me personally, I don't know if there is a God, but I personally think it's not likely for me. I love when religion works for communities, to build them up, to make them stronger, for people to feel more connected to their community, to become more involved in volunteer work. I just don't think you need religion for that to happen. And I'm a part of the community that doesn't need religion, but will support it if it's healthy. And unfortunately, I'm a member of the LGBTQ community. I have been persecuted, I would say, by people of religion because they feel that my personal choices are not in line with their religion. I've also been harmed in certain ways for my beliefs or for my actions. based solely on religion. And I've also seen people support people who really, I think, don't do good things or make good choices simply because they claim to be a religious politician. And I do not believe religion was meant to do things like that. So for me personally, I am against religion that harms others, that judges others, and I'm 100% for any religion or spirituality or atheism that is aimed at doing good.
Yeah, no, that's all. I think I'm
So
sorry.
hold on.
Yeah.
Explain to everybody what she believes.
Well, it's interesting, what I took from it, it's interesting that you started being an atheist and then claimed agnosticism as well.
They're two separate things.
I know, and that's why I was curious as to how they fit together.
Okay, well, let me explain it in case it wasn't clear. So an atheist, simply, you either, is saying that you don't believe in deities. So if you're a theist, you believe in a god or multiple gods, right? Okay, so atheist just means you do not believe in a god or multiple gods. An agnostic identifies as believing, you know what, I don't have all the answers, I don't know the scientific basis and facts of everything on this earth, maybe there is a God.
So
But you personally don't believe in them, so they're completely mutually exclusive.
that's
So let me interject. Explain to everyone what she believes.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I think, if I may, I think, because I personally, what I heard was two distinctly different, you said they were two distinctly different things. I think that you are not sure.
Okay, fair.
That's
Can you
what I
pull
thought.
up the definitions of
Yes.
agnostic and atheist for us?
Atheism is a lack of belief in the existence of a god or God. So atheism is not a construct, it is simply an absence of belief in a god.
I have no belief in God, none.
A person who believes that nothing is known or can be known of the existence or nature of God or of anything beyond material phenomena.
So for example, when my parents say to me, we believe in God, God is real because I feel it, my response to them is, I'm happy that you have found something that you believe in, but that is not proof that it exists. And for me, personally, I do not believe that it exists. But that's just for me. I'm not pushing that on my parents.
No, I understand. No, I understand that completely, and I'm sorry that your experience with religion was negative,
Thank you.
and I see it all the time.
Sure.
You know, and so I can't empathize with that, but I can certainly sympathize with it.
Thank you.
But I believe that if, I don't understand personally how you can believe there is no deity and then take the stance that you're not sure.
Well, it's not that I'm not sure. I personally don't believe there is.
Okay.
But I am open to the fact that I don't have a scientific basis to prove to you that your God does not exist.
Nor do I.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? And that's what religion is mostly. It's faith.
Faith,
So
right?
you might not be able to sit down and say like 1 + 1 = 2 and here's why we know.
Right.
Right? However, I believe that anything is possible. If you were to say, hey Danielle, I saw a unicorn, I'm not really gonna believe you, but I'm like, you know what? I have not seen everything in the universe. Perhaps there is a unicorn. And I don't say that lightly. It's just an extreme example to show you that just because we haven't seen it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Much like people way back in history thought the earth was flat. Many things change as we find new information, as we learn new things. All I'm saying is maybe in the future, I would believe there is a God.
Danielle,
Yes.
explain to everyone what Mark believes.
Mark believes that religion has been helpful to his life, especially recently. I got the impression that it fills him with happiness or joy or some type of good, positive feelings. He didn't really state what he believes for others, but I'm assuming he would like people to feel like he feels. Is that
That's an
correct?
assumption.
Mhm.
Mark,
The
explain
joy
that.
part of
Yeah, no, not at all. Not at all. I don't. I wouldn't want to impose my beliefs or my will on anybody. I think one of the things that I've taken away from my particular experience with Catholicism is the 2 or 3 things that I kind of like to see drive my life are non-judgment. There is no judge. I am not to judge.
Awesome.
That is not to me. That's God. That's God, the only one to judge. No one else should judge.
But partially by telling me that your God is judging me is also a
I
little
didn't
bit,
say my God was judging
well, you said it's up to God to judge. Right. But if I don't believe in that God, then that sort of comes off negative to somebody who doesn't believe in your religion.
And I don't expect you to accept that as something you agree with at all. The other thing I believe is in forgiveness, and that we all have, Catholics call it sin, I call it maybe frailty or faults or bad habits. So we make mistakes, we make the wrong decisions, we do the wrong thing.
We're human.
None of us are immune to that, and I think people should be forgiven. And
Let me
that's
interject
another
for-
topic that could go deeper on.
Sure.
Let me interject for a moment.
Sure.
Do you know there is no God? K-N-O-W. Do you know there is no
No.
God? Okay.
Do you know that there is a God?
Yes,
You know that there is a God. How do you know?
it's my faith. I can't prove it scientifically, and I don't feel any obligation to.
Okay. Question.
I was just going to say, maybe there's a distinction between, I've heard it discussed many times, the difference between a knowledge claim and a belief claim. So atheism is more of a belief claim. I don't believe in a God, whereas agnosticism is a knowledge claim,
Yes.
right? It's taking a stance in to know or not to know, whereas one is to believe or not to believe.
That's a good way
Right.
to put it.
It's a good distinction.
Yeah. Yes.
I have a question. I sense from you guys two different emotions when you talk about your religion. I sense joy and peace, and what I sense from your emotion talking about your experience, I sense anger. Am I sensing the wrong emotion? Are you happy with where you are now?
Oh, I'm 100% happy.
Okay.
The anger, if that's what you were
Yeah.
saying, is stemming from abuses I've experienced simply because I'm not religious.
Right.
Or abuses I've experienced at the hands of priests.
Right.
So that's something that's going to generate a lot of emotion.
Right.
But where I am currently is so much better off than where I was when I was forced to be in a life of religion. Thank you for asking it.
Questions, comments? Here.
Well, what I'm having a hard time hearing both of you is that we are making assumptions of what you are, how you are defining God. Because to me, I have a hard time believing there really is such thing as atheism, because to me, my definition of God is love. And I'm sure you believe in love. So to me, how can you be an atheist if you believe in love?
That's an assumption. Define God.
God is the creator of all of us, the creator of everything that's here. You know, he is the ultimate deity.
Are your parents God?
No,
Okay. So they created you, correct?
they were part of the process.
Yeah,
Integral.
yeah. So you're saying God created everything.
Yes.
Okay, got it. Define God.
Wait,
Or-
can I ask a clarifying
Sure,
question?
sure.
You said the ultimate deity, so do you believe in other deities as well?
I don't.
Okay.
So define God. Or what? Wow.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Yes, so to me, God is something that comes from organized religion for the most part. There are religions that do not have a deity. So there are religions such as certain forms of Hinduism where they don't believe in God at all. And there are religions that believe in the spirituality and the connectedness of the universe. I personally, of course, I believe in love. I believe in being kind. I believe in doing what is right as often as you can. Understanding that humans always make errors, that's like part of being human, but everyone deserves forgiveness, and I believe in forgiveness. Just for me, it doesn't stem from a deity. There is no one in a heaven, there is no one in a hell, there is nothing like that that's dictating what I do. That's all my choice. I believe we're all connected, but to me, it's not because of a God. I honestly have no idea how we came to be here outside of evolution, what started the first spark, I don't know, and I'm okay not knowing.
I'm 100% comfortable in agreeably disagreeing with you.
Yeah.
And you know what I see? You both do not, I feel, I don't want to assume, you do not judge.
Well, of course I judge. That's part of being human. I don't think you can completely get rid of judgment, but I try not to judge negatively. So like your experience when you were talking made me feel good. When you're talking about religion, I was like, oh, it gives him comfort, it gives him joy. He's found something that he didn't have for a large portion of his life, and that's amazing.
Which sounds like love.
Yeah.
Yes. Right here.
Can I ask you a question? Do you believe in miracles?
Define a miracle. I believe in spectacular, amazing things happen. Do I think they happen because of a deity? No.
Do you think that anything ever happens for any reason? Or is it all just like a chaos, you
A
know?
miracle is defined as a surprising and welcome event that is not explicable by natural or scientific laws and is therefore considered to be the work of a divine agency.
So no, I do not believe in I do believe that things happen and I'm like, whoa! And
Where was
there's,
that voice
there's no scientific basis. Right?
Question right here.
I think it's interesting that when we talk about the idea of God, typically in the West, we always, like I keep hearing Danielle say like a deity or a God. Whereas if you went to India, you start talking about a God. That, to them, and to a lot of like Sikhism and Buddhism and Vedanta, the idea of God is more like the total isness, just the isness itself and the consciousness that is concurrent with the isness. And so that to them, God is not a God.
And-
God is just a word to describe the is.
Right. And what is the isness, Nicole?
I
That
don't
is.
know which of those religions you're talking about, because several of them do not believe in any deity, including Buddhism.
Sikhism. That is
Not, that's what I mean though. Like, not a
oh,
deity.
The
They'll use the word God interchangeably
So the
with.
God, the construct of God that we're using for the purpose of this conversation is that of the God of monotheistic thought. So
Oh, there you
in
go.
monotheistic thought, God in this context, for the sake of the conversation, is conceived of as being the supreme being, creator, deity, and principal object of faith in the monotheistic thought.
Wow.
So it's the
Yeah.
framework
I just find it
around-
interesting that we typically in the West will use. It's like we only can get into that monotheistic box
right.
being the Christian nation.
Right.
Sikhism is a monotheistic religion.
Oh, here.
God told me not to ask the question, so skip.
All right. Clear. Questions, comments? Oh, right here.
For the purposes of clarification, if you'd like to fact check, you happen to say that in Hinduism they don't believe in God.
Not in all Hinduism,
Well,
certain
I was
forms.
just going to say, she's, I think, correct in terms of Buddhism, but in Hinduism,
No, not
do-
Hinduism, I said Buddhism. If I
Oh.
said Hinduism, that was a
Okay.
mistake. I said
That's
there's
fine.
multiple gods in
that's
Hinduism.
fine, that's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine, because just to continue, in Hinduism, they do believe in a God and a manifestation of God in many forms. Right.
Hinduism is defined differently by different cultures. It has been variously defined as a religion, a religious tradition, a set of religious beliefs, or a way of life.
Question.
My question is, we keep having different words, or we keep describing the same thing. Is it possible that God is really a question of language rather than actual things that we're trying to describe?
I love what you said.
That's kind of what I was gonna say, when you say you don't believe in there's so many people that are Christian, when they talk about God, I don't believe in their concept of God either. We all have different concepts, and I have a relative that's atheist, and yet he believes in love and it being powerful, and to me, that is saying you do believe in God, it's just how we define it.
Which brings us to. You go first.
You go first.
Okay.
My position on abortion, I am pro-life, so I'm against abortion. That ties back into my religious belief. That's a driving factor behind that belief. Context, I guess, would be my eldest daughter was born illegitimately, and my grandson was born illegitimately, and my older brother had 2 children through natural birth. His wife had 5 miscarriages, and they went to adopt. And it took them about 3.5 years and about $30,000, and ended up with 2 kids from Korea. They couldn't find them here. So I feel pretty strongly that there's plenty of homes for kids that weren't quote unquote meant to be. And so I don't like that side of that argument personally. But I just believe that the baby is there upon conception, and I'm against abortion.
Okay. Aaron?
Okay, well, I'll give you a little bit of background because we heard your background. But so I was raised evangelical Christian. My father was a pastor and also a physics teacher. So I'm a whole world of contradictions, which is great. I walked away from my faith for many, many years. I am now currently very much involved in my faith, so I'm very much Christian as well. A lot of people would argue that I'm on the wrong side of that, which is why it's a contradiction, but I'm definitely very pro-choice. And I have several reasons to back that up, but mainly, I think that growing up in the place that I did in the Midwest, in a small town, it's going to be based on experience. When I was 16 years old, I was very rebellious and had good friends who were also very rebellious, and we were involved running out and being wild and partying and stuff like that. And I thought that I was pregnant, and my friend thought that she was pregnant. And we both went to Planned Parenthood, which I am so thankful to God that Planned Parenthood exists and that it's funded, because there is no way, raised the way that I was, that there was any way we could have gotten any kind of medical attention or anything like that, which I believe is your right. If you're old enough to have sex, you should be old enough to make up your mind if you want to be put on contraceptives or thing like that. But anyway, it turns out I wasn't pregnant, she was. And she ended up having an abortion, and which was the right decision for her, but the amount of shame and ridicule that was forced upon her for doing so led her into a life of eventually heroin and death. And I can't help but wonder why it was just very, very unfair. She didn't ask to be pregnant. She was raped. She was date raped. She didn't love the guy. I didn't think it was her responsibility for anybody to force her to carry that child, to have that child. Or I really believe that it's her body, it's her choice. I don't think men should even have an opinion on it, to be completely honest. So that's kind of where I'm coming from.
All right, Mark, explain to everybody what Aaron believes.
Well, I think Aaron, and again, sorry that all happened. And this is such a personal thing, right?
Right.
And experience shapes us, and circumstances shape us. I think Aaron believes in choice, pro-choice. I'm not sure how broad that extends in terms of time frames or circumstances, or if there are just, it doesn't matter when, it doesn't matter the circumstance.
It's a choice. That's what, for me, the choice would be to not have an abortion. To me, I wouldn't be able to do it because of my religious beliefs, but my religious beliefs are mine. They're not hers or hers or hers or hers. And I think that the loving and Christian thing to do is to let people have a safe medical choice.
Okay. Aaron, explain to everybody what Mark believes.
Mark believes that life is precious, and that it's not probably our right to take that life off of the planet and rob it of a life with a good home. Is that right?
It's good.
Okay.
All right. So I'm going to throw a question out. Government. Should government pay for abortions?
No.
No. Like Planned Parenthood.
Well, Planned Parenthood doesn't pay for abortion.
No.
It assists
The government
to a certain degree.
gives money to Planned Parenthood.
Yes.
And
But that's a great question, because it's called Planned Parenthood for a reason. Because it's not just about abortions; it's also about protecting yourself and not getting pregnant, which I didn't do, thank God. Because I was able to walk in somewhere without telling my parents and get put on, a contraceptive and things like that. You can plan out your pregnancy.
right. So you believe that government money should not go towards Planned Parenthood?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want my money going towards it, my tax money going towards it. So I think, if an entity like Planned Parenthood wants to incorporate and establish itself as a private capital venture to do things that are within the boundaries of the law, who am I to say they can't or shouldn't do that? That's
For some
What
additional
But they are in the law.
Planned Parenthood provides services including birth control, cancer screenings and information, emergency contraception, health and wellness, pregnancy counseling, sex and relationship counseling, sexual orientation and gender, STD counseling and treatment, in addition to abortion.
Do you believe that healthcare should cover Viagra?
Good question. Not something I've ever concerned myself with.
Leave it to Amanda, turn it into a practice.
Seriously.
I would like to say something
Yeah.
about the Planned Parenthood statistics. I just saw this, and I think there's a statistic about the percentage of money and time spent on these other healthcare issues for women versus abortions, and the way they track that apparently is specific instances when you check into Planned Parenthood. And the instances include signing in, getting a shot, having a checkup. That's 3.
Or how about being really poor and needing to get your pap smear every year?
Yes.
Because it's what we're told as being a healthy choice, is that you're supposed to get your cervix checked and you can't afford it because you don't have health insurance because you're a waitress and you're going to college or whatever.
No,
So
I think healthcare should be available to people that need it like that. I don't think Planned Parenthood is the only option for that. I think that's inflated. That's an inflated view of what Planned
but
Parenthood
it is
actually
the only
does.
option though. There is no other public health service for instances of your, hoo-ha.
Statistics on how,
I don't agree that that's true.
statistics on how Planned Parenthood money is spent. 42% of Planned Parenthood money is spent on STI and STD treatment and counseling. 34% of that is spent on contraception. 11% is spent on other women's services. 9% is spent on cancer cancer screening. 3% is spent on abortion services and counseling. 1% is spent on other services.
Okay, so that's 3%, Mark. So I'm check Nicole. Are there other clinics out there that do abortion besides Planned Parenthood?
On abortion, he was saying, offer health care.
Counseling services, so they don't actually offer abortion. They don't perform abortions. They offer counseling and services and information and medical guidance.
So who does the abortions?
Private clinics.
Private. Oh, so they go to Planned Parenthood and then they go to a doctor.
Planned Parenthood is a nonprofit organization that provides information about women's health.
I see. We're out of time. You know what that means?
No.
Sorry. Next time.